So, Dave, let's talk about this really cool set of content that we just came up with for F5 Distributed Cloud, multi-cloud networking. First of all, a nifty demo guide, which is a GitHub repository of content. And in it, as you can see, there is a collection of Docker containers, which you can use to deploy the this kind of like a lab guide, Helm charts, Nginx config, and other things that relate to this architecture that allows you to very quickly explore different use cases for multi-cloud networking. So why don't you take us through this kind of first part, talking about deploying things in Customer Edge. What is it and how customers use it?
Yeah, so first of all, we're using specifically features and products within the distributed cloud platform. And we're using that platform to form a mesh, network level mesh, as well as an app level connectivity to be able to make it easier to access your resources and deliver the application. So something that we're doing in this specific demo guide is we're allowing, or what we're showing specifically, is the ability to deploy an application. It may be distributed. Some parts are running regionally in the edge, an edge that's hosted by distributed cloud by F5, and some components are highly independent or may need to be stored separately. Those components live on the customer edge. And what we're doing in this guide is showing a user how they would deploy the services, maybe even do it in an automated fashion using Helm charts, for example, or even using the distributed cloud console to do it. And we're showing how easy it is to get the application stood up and running and to get it connected, whether that's using the network level connectivity or the app level connectivity. And we try to do this in multiple ways. So we've got an article that covers this. We've got the demo guide that we're showing now. And we've also got a simulator. So if you don't really want to get your hands dirty yet, you don't have the resources, or maybe you just want to see what things are capable of, we have a simulator that's available for you to jump right in and get your hands on one way or another.
Right. And let's take a look at that, because this is probably a quick resource that also helps with storytelling here. In the architecture that we highlight here are some of the elements that you've outlined. One of the ones on the left side is regional edge. So my understanding and the way we've been talking about regional edge is those are the workloads that are running on F5 provided POPs, points of presence, around 20 plus regions around the world. And they're the fastest way to get a deployment going. So having a workload running on a POP essentially is just a matter of a few clicks.
Certainly. So what we typically see is for the regional edge, this provides your general point ingress to the application. So if you have access, users accessing your application from different points across the internet, typically we like to see the application handle everything at the starting point. This could be the app's front end. That would be on the regional edge. Try thinking about this as the light end of the application. You're not going to do any heavy processing at the regional edge. You could do it if you really need it, but what we're seeing from our customers is really we just need to get highly available website pages out. We need it to be relatively low latency. And for any of the data that we need to fill in for that user-specific session, to go ahead and pull that from different customer edge locations or silos. So typically what we're seeing is front end sits on the regional edge, and then all the data and the database storage and all the special information that needs to be pulled up for this application to work for a user, that'll be kept in different locations at the customer edge. And what this enables a business to do is to be able to keep the data that's maybe local or specific to a user privately contained in that location where the data can be safely stored. So this really applies to the data privacy models. It really helps it make it easy so that even though you're deploying your app and making it available everywhere, user-specific data still only gets stored in those specific customer edge locations.
Right. So if you have compliance requirements and if you're a country in Europe and you need to make sure that your customer data sits within the data center in that country, it would make sense to use a CE as a customer edge model. I would imagine also maybe more compute-intensive applications would also find its way to customer edge because you can define the types of underlying infrastructure that you're provisioning. Because obviously, as you can see here, AWS and Azure and VMware are all potential infrastructure targets for customer edge. You essentially abstract that infrastructure out into distributed cloud, make it into one of the sites. What's interesting about this scenario, and we'll go into it in the next video in the series, is we're deploying a highly available configuration for a PostgreSQL database as an example of a centralized workload. I would imagine any backend workload would also qualify. So if you have a central inventory service or something like that where you need to have it in one place, but you have to make sure it's highly available and is able to, for example, run on multiple nodes, this type of model would work very well. What is the value of having this HA configuration, highly available configuration on Kubernetes?
Yeah, one of the really unique and differentiating principles or values that we provide with this is the ability to be able to run this database offline. So should a user be accessing it locally to the site, the database will always be available. And what's different with our customer edge locations versus some of the centralized, controlled, and managed ones is that with a distributed cloud, all those services continue to run locally within the site. It would also give the user direct access to that database. If they need it fast, they need low latency, they have that ability built right in. Also, maybe if you need to do maintenance on that database, you can also have the backup database be immediately available without having to make any changes to your database or the configuration of the environment.
Right. And also, because everything within distributed cloud has and could have Kubernetes running on top of it, I guess within customer edge environment, you can run a virtual Kubernetes instance, which is a full Kubernetes site or full Kubernetes deployment that is managed by distributed cloud. And because you have ability to have multiple pods running essentially different parts of this highly available service, then you get to HA configurations, because Kubernetes is also deployed to multiple nodes within your customer edge. So in this topology, as you see here, we have example of several nodes within AWS VPC, and these nodes are used to host a site within F5 distributed cloud, on top of which runs a virtual Kubernetes cluster, and inside the cluster there are multiple pods that are hosting parts of this PostgreSQL cluster. And in the next video, we'll talk about how we got there with Helm charts and configuration of CE, and then we'll connect to this deployment from the regional edge just to make sure everything works. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you in the next video.